Welcome to RVing in New England, the nation's only forum that puts you on stage with some of the biggest names in the RV industry. And now your hosts, John DePietro and Bob Zagami.
Well, not exactly John DePietro and Bob Zagami, because John DePietro is somewhere in the sky heading to Tuscany and Rome this week with his daughter and a couple of their grandchildren with him. So in John's place is our regular fill-in host, Uncle Bernie, RV Game Changer podcast and brand ambassador at Campers Inn in Merrimack, New Hampshire. And for my money, Bernie's got some of the best product interviews on the internet to do that. So welcome, Bernie. Glad to have you filling in for John tonight.
Oh yeah, my absolute pleasure. I'm glad to be filling in for John. And I'll try to be really cynical just to make sure that I kind of do my part to take over for him tonight.
Well, and if you want to break out in a nice Italian opera or something, it's some.
Caro mio ben, credimi al men, senza di te languisce il cor. All right.
Now, you when you travel and you get on the airplanes, do you just break out in song? If it's
just randomly break out in song.
Boring flight.
It's kind of funny because it's like my subtext always goes there. I see something and it triggers a song cue. And just when I'm with you hanging out, I just feel like I can just be myself, right? So I just kind of break into song. But yeah, like when I'm at work and whatever, and we're having a little bit of a fun mood, someone will say something silly and it triggers a song cue and I just go for it.
That's fantastic. You want to give a little bit of your background? Because, we took the summer off and we've had a great return schedule. The shows have been killing it since we came back in October. Give a little bit of your background.
Things that have been happening lately, you mean? Yeah. So, it's been kind of busy, We've been going to a lot of different shows, went to a lot of events, went to Perry, Georgia earlier in the year and, just got back from Myrtle Beach, went to Hershey. It's been really exciting and spending a lot of time with my colleagues, in these different locations, getting to know some of the people that know me already, which is kind of cool, and they were, very gracious, and we did a lot of videos together, and you probably saw some of those along the way.
Yeah, well, you kind of hit a nice stride with the Hershey show, because I know from talking to other people that were down there, people sought you out. People like Matt Foxcroft, other broadcasters and podcasts say, "Hey, wait a minute. I know Uncle Bernie. I see you on the program, and I see you on your own program. So you've made it in the big leagues, Bernie."
Yeah, it was really nice bumping into some of the other influences out there, and that recognized me, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Getting to meet all these people, and and especially Cohen. Cohen was delightful to meet and greet and do a video with. While we're there in Hershey,
I've got to touch base with his mother to see how his influence and career is going along. So let's jump into the program and bring up our guest. And I will bring up Mr. Sokol first because he's so famous. We have to give him his.
Yeah, we got to get him to kind of give us a little bit of a description of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Mike, good evening.
Hey, good evening.
Well, this program actually came about because of the one we did about 3 weeks ago with my technical advisory board with Ryan and Randy and Mike. And we then, because we talked about it from the dealer perspective, what was the GMI going to be from the dealer perspective? And Mike thought, hey, if we're going to talk about the dealers, we got to talk about campgrounds. And who better to talk about campgrounds than our friends at KOA, Ryan Bergen. Ryan's Campground Design Services. Eric Rathburn is the VP of Real Estate Development. And welcome to RVing in New England, guys. We're glad to have you. And we'll have a spirited conversation about GMIs and electricity and all that good stuff.
Sounds good. Thanks for having
Happy to
us.
be on, Bob. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Why don't you give the folks a little bit of a background what you do for KOA?
I've been with KOA since 2020, and I do obviously the campground design stuff. So anytime somebody needs to upgrade sites, add sites, or do an electrical plan, that is me along with a couple other team members here in the office. So I've been doing it about 5 years and absolutely loving it. I tell people it's like playing Campground Tycoon. You just kind of get to build all the sites, add the amenities, and it's really great. I love it.
Especially now that there's so much, on amenities and building out different experiences for people. It's not just two white birch trees in a gravel pit anymore.
Exactly. Everybody wants a unique experience. That is the number one thing our campers are looking for. And so it's been a lot of fun over the past couple of years, finding big bocce balls or big chess sets, all the fun, unique stuff that we get to do it's really great.
Eric, how about you?
Yeah, so I lead a team of project managers and facility managers, and we oversee what we call the Oak portfolio. So that's the owned assets of KOA.
Uh-huh.
And so my team, we get to really build everything that Ryan and his team get to concept and create, and we get to go build it. And we all also take care of our campgrounds and do major infrastructure, renovations, and spend a lot of time on electrical and sewer and all of the fun things that campground operators get to deal with every day.
And deal with the local code enforcers, all the standards and all the requirements that they put on you, and say, no, you really want to have all that stuff? No, let's do it. So
and they can never be the same.
Yeah.
And every jurisdiction's a little different, which is
every city and town. They could be contiguous to each other, and they'd live in two different worlds.
It's called the authority having jurisdiction.
that's it.
Your local inspector / whatever.
Oh, that's triggering. That's triggering.
Before we jump in, and I'm going to bring Michael in a little while. Before we do that, we got a few people. Walter's up in Claremont, I think, Central Florida. So I got to go up and have lunch with him, seeing that I'm down here. Valerie Taylor from the Villages. Glad to have you, Valerie. Jim Roy and Eric and Ryan. Jim Roy is the #1 restorer of vintage trailers, specializing in Airstream. Anybody in the country that's got an Airstream that wants to have it done is going to take it up. Most of them are going to take it up to Monmouth, Maine, in the middle of the woods, where there's no civilized, society, and you'll see a big building for Silver Moose Restorations. And Jim does a fantastic job on that. And we got the first lady of campgrounds, Sandy Ellington. I haven't talked to Sandy for a while, but Sandy I know has been having communications with Michael, and she also consults with a lot of campgrounds in the country. And then Don Hawes is here from Athens, Texas, coming from the National RV Training Academy. And you see, our fans are so well schooled. If they are late for the program, they apologize to everybody else. That's why you see, because if they don't apologize to everybody else, John and I will beat up on them. So, Michael, we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called GMI.
GMI. Ah, yes. Breaking news. GMI. Well, the thumbnail sketch of this has been in the works for the last 5 or 6 years as part of the NEC. I've known about it since its inception and been kind of watching all of it go along. It is now going to be enabled to go into place sometime in late 2026, probably third quarter. We're going to know more in a week. But basically, it's a grounding monitor interrupter. It is a new safety device being added to all new RVs that will monitor the incoming ground from your shore power connection to make sure that it's contiguous enough that it's working fine in order to keep you from getting shocked. And that's really its main thing. So you can think of this as a progression from when we originally had GFCIs, ground fault circuit interrupts. And, first we had grounds back in the 50s. Before that, we had no grounds on anything. And then we put ground wires on things. And then we put GFCIs that would kind of look for unbalanced current and shut things off. The RV industry's done a couple of other little things in the interim. But now the GFCIs is a brand new gadget that's going to be mounted inside of the RVs itself that will test the pedestals and your wiring to make sure everything is good. And if everything is not good, it just shuts off the power automatically.
So, Mike, is that going to be kind of in line before it gets to the converter or anything like that? Or do you have an idea where it's going to get placed?
Oh, I know exactly where it's going to go. It's going to be the first thing. When this thing plugs into your RV, it is right there. So I know one of the manufacturers is kind of making an extended plug. It's a box, literally a black box in there that stops all power going into your RV. Does not mess with your battery system or your generator system. It's all about the incoming power from the pedestal.
Yeah, I was just talking to Campers Inn's Master Certified Tech, Keith Marshall, today, and we were talking a little bit about it. And he did mention that, he had several times he had to go out to campgrounds and check on folks because they were having problems with what they call a hut box or, the hut skin on the camper.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and he said every time that he remembers, it was always had to do with, the ground not being, adequate.
That is correct. So if you have a proper ground, if your pedestal is properly grounded, it should be impossible for you to develop this hot skin voltage. Here's one of my little graphics, and you can see my intrepid little guy there unwisely touching the door handle on an RV that has a 100-volt hot skin, and he's standing on the kind of the damp ground. You can see the current is flowing through his hand, through the middle of him, and the middle of him is his heart. It's surprisingly easy to put your heart into fibrillation. You've heard of defibrillators, right? That kind of reboots your heart. Fibrillation is what happens when you get a shock. And 60 hertz AC is exactly the right frequency to make your heart go flutter, flutter, flutter. And unless somebody intervenes with a defibrillator, you're likely to be dead in 5 minutes or less.
Well, what's interesting, this has been a problem for 10, 20, 30 years. The industry has known about it. It's just been slow. And through your efforts, Mike, to work with the standards people, and it's finally coming to fruition. So let me jump over to Eric and Ryan. What have you done? How deeply have you been involved in the investigation of this? Because we all know that if somebody has one of these new rigs and they show up at your campground and they don't have power, they're not going to call the dealer. They're not going to call the manufacturer. They're going to go up to the office and say, your pedestal's not working or there's a problem. And this is why Mike and I wanted to have this series of programs so that consumers, because we have a large consumer audience. And our last one, when we did it with the technical panel, was viewed, I think it's up over 26,000 views in 2 or 3 weeks. So, it kind of spreads after the live program. So who wants to touch first on what you guys know and what you're looking at from KOA's perspective to make sure that there's a pleasant camping experience there?
Yeah, so I'll take that. So, we've been in contact with most of the OEMs and have had really, really good conversations with the OEMs. Also been in contact with a number of the device manufacturers. Also had the opportunity to attend in person last week the RVIA Electrical Technical Subcommittee as a guest, and really talk to a lot of the folks making the recommendations that are really deeply involved with this rollout. We've had the opportunity to have one of the device manufacturers on one of our properties to do some testing. Unfortunately, we didn't have a device that we could use when we were testing, but we did do, testing with typical meters and other, traditional tools. We also have some time scheduled next week to meet with another device manufacturer to do some testing. Hopefully they're going to bring a device. We also have some really, really good partners that we work with on a daily basis that are really engaged in having these conversations. And we're hoping next week we're actually going to be able to do some testing and actually put some scenarios together. So we're going to be able to essentially create some scenarios, not in a campground, but in a training area that one of our vendors has, and really try to create some of these. And hopefully we get some real world examples using a device. And so that's the goal for next week.
Mike, you want to talk about what you're doing as far as building some of the testing devices?
Right. Well, the key is I've been involved. I know exactly what UL 2299 is, which is the document that shows these guys how it's supposed to be built, and I've been in contact with them for a while. And so what I'm doing is I'm putting together a series of SOPs, standing operating procedures, basically to go in. First off, you want to triage the pedestals to find the good, the bad, and the fixable kind of things. And you need a quick way to do that. But then you also need to be able to troubleshoot if there's a problem. Campgrounds are also going to need to have kind of a go, no go thing, because it's not just the pedestal that could have a problem. So for instance, if somebody has a broken ground connection and a dog bone adapter or the shore power cord or a failure inside, as a campground, you need to quickly identify if in fact if the problem is in the pedestal, is the problem in the cord, is the problem in the RV. So you can kind of, not be running around in a circle. I've been an electrical troubleshooter for over 50 years professionally in every kind of situation you could possibly imagine. And I know how confusing it is unless you create failure scenarios. So I applaud KOA for this idea of creating that. And I've done this forever. I've got a pedestal sitting on my desk here that I can create any kind of miswiring condition possible. And then you can identify it by a few measurements, and you can kind of zero in on what the problem could be and come up with possible solutions. And so that's the trick. A lot of electricians are only taught how to wire correctly. They don't get to observe improper wiring. Now, as many of you guys know, I've been a rock and roller for 50 years, and I've been a musician now for, oh my God, almost 70 years, if you can believe that. My mom said I could play piano before I could talk. I was one of those guys. And so I got really interested in all of this kind of stuff, right? So the key here is, I got some shocks early on. I didn't like it. I really started diving into this. And then I had to create failure mechanisms so that I could understand, and I played in every kind of crappy bar, worship center, outside stage, inside stage, you name it. And I discovered that not everything is wired 100% correctly. Go figure. And so electricians that I knew only knew how to wire correctly. I would, on purpose, do reverse polarity, open ground, reverse polarity, bootleg grounds. I'd show reflected hot skin conditions. And many of the articles and videos that I've produced show these really strange conditions because people say, I am seeing this thing, I'm getting this measurement. What could explain it? And I go, oh, I know that. Been there, done that. Here's how you fix it. And that's the key. You've got to know you got to fall off the edge to know where the edge is. You got to know the ways that these things can be miswired accidentally, sometimes on purpose.
Hey, Mike, do you have an idea when this is going to be starting to be enforced as a release time for the RV industry for the new product coming out?
I just talked to somebody at RVIA today, and they said there's a meeting next week that is going to put a pin in the date of this thing.
Okay.
It's supposed to be sometime third quarter-ish of 2026. And
right.
now a lot of people are worried they're going to make me put this on my older RVs. That's not the case. This is only those built forward. There was a lot of misinformation in some of the rollout that this was going to have to be put on inside of pedestals. No, that's not at all. This only goes inside of RVs. It will go in any RV that has a 30 or 50 amp shore power. Apparently 20 amp ones are not going to require it, but I don't Do you guys know of any modern RV that's take 20 amp shore power?
Even the pop-ups have the big 30 amp plug. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know of anyone. So virtually every single one of them's going to have that. The key, of course, is things that a non-GMI equipped RV plugged into a reverse polarity pedestal or one with an open ground will still operate, sometimes safely, sometimes not. But a GMI equipped RV is just going to refuse to pass AC power into it. It's just not going to do it.
And does it need to get reset if it's triggered, or is it just automatically reset if this problem is solved?
It's supposed to be automatically reset. I haven't seen any of these yet. Everybody's kind of playing their cards close to the vest, as it were, right? All of the guys are doing these things, but it's not like a GFCI. So GFCI by code cannot automatically reset itself. You have to physically click it. This thing, I believe it's going to probably be a time delay in it, very similar to how what we would call an EMS or advanced surge protector would work. After a certain amount of timeout, to allow usually the air conditioner compressor to leak down and equalize, the thing will come back on. And many of them have, optionally, they can have Bluetooth warnings to your phone and such, and a variety of other things. It just depends what other features they want in. But right now, the bare bones stuff should just turn itself back on. I don't think there's any real controls on these things, but there's supposed to be indicator lights to tell you what's happening.
So I'm just going to do a little math here. I like math, and you seem to be a guy that likes math too. I just looked up, and the RVIA says that there's 11.2 million RVs in the United States right now.
Right.
Say if I average out, say the last 10 years, we're producing about 450,000 RVs new.
Okay.
So, and that comes out to what, like a little over 3% of new RVs every year. So it's going to take a little while for this to really have an effect on the campgrounds. The good news is, first of all, sounds like a year pretty much to at least begin to address this problem. And then there's probably going to be stuff that happens over the next couple of years just to make sure that everything's hunky and dory. Is that reasonably?
I think so. And I think that Ryan and Eric can talk better about that. The fact of the matter is, I know that there's always this wait to the last minute kind of a thing, and nobody's going to do anything until somebody complains. You do not want to be going out and trying to fix your pedestals when you have a 4th of July weekend crowd. You just don't.
No.
So Eric and Ryan, I mean, I know that KOA is very proactive in terms of maintenance on their pedestals, but that is not the case in many smaller, even, state parks are terrible with this kind of stuff. What do you guys see out there?
That's a great question, because I think Sandy brings up a great point, and educating is going to be our first step. We've talked about the fail safes and creating those conditions, and taking those fail safes and then transforming those into solutions is really what we're going to be doing as a result of those testing. So we are getting all sorts of educational material ready to really try to prep the system, because you're right. I mean, a year from now, this probably isn't going to be a huge issue, but we want to get out in front of this as fast as we can, because 5 years from now, it will be. And we want to make sure that everybody is safe and still having a great time out at the campgrounds. Because one bad experience, can kind of ruin the bunch. So
it doesn't take much, that's for sure.
No.
So the word can get out. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so Sandy says training campground staff to know how to see when a unit is produced in 2026 should be one step. That's right, because people are not going to come out of the office and go ask the person if they've got a GMI on their unit. There'll be a lot of 2026 units that will not have these. So the first year will be the most confusing. Would be nice if this was indicated on a sticker on the RV. Ryan, when you have these meetings, is anybody talking about a sticker or how they're going to identify or Mike?
That was never a point that was brought up, but that's a good thought. And I think that with the 2026, especially, like you said, if only some of them are coming out with this, that would be something worth exploring. I know that we've kind of talked about identifying units that come in and educating our campground staff to go, okay, let's look for areas that we know are all set with proper grounding that are going to work, and funneling those new RVs there. But go ahead, Mike. I saw your hand.
And I would suggest that sticker ought to be close to where the shore power connection goes
Right.
in.
100%.
Exactly.
Something that notes that. I do an awful lot of remote troubleshooting with my readership and such. And I say, do you guys have a automatic transfer switch? Huh? What's that? Do you have I got guys, do you have a 30 or a 50 amp thing? I don't know. It twist locks in. It's got 3 prongs. I'm going, well, 3 prongs could be for 50, could be 30. Right. And so that's the thing. They will know almost nothing about this. So I like the idea of the stickers.
Yeah.
And some sort of educational thing. And both Sandy Ellingson and I have talked about, what happens. What does the campground, how do they react when somebody comes to the desk and say, I've got no power? You've got to kind of think that stuff through in advance, because you don't want them to have a bad experience.
That happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will tell you, I mean, I think, you mentioned a great thing, and, education, Ryan mentioned that, we kind of have an all hands on deck approach right now. We've got a great team that's working internally with our, both with our Campground Design Services team, our operations teams that's managing our owned assets, as well as our communications team. And so we are meeting regularly, coming up with FAQs and much like you, Mike, coming up with, different examples and opportunities. Our goal is to have something out there where we can help people try to figure out how to troubleshoot, how to deal with the guests, just kind of the de-escalation if this, not if, but when it happens. And so we're really working really hard to make sure that we communicate and give our system the tools to be able to prepare for when this happens.
I think Sandy mentioned putting it next to the gross vehicle weight rating. Those are inside and on the inside cabinets.
They used to be. They're outside now on the driver's side.
Outside
the driver's side near the front, the gross vehicle weight.
I think it should be right near where the electrical unit comes in and goes out. Something bright, it's, GMI equipped or something like that.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So is that not coming up in some of these meetings that you guys are having?
It did not come up in the meeting that I attended last week in the RVI electrical technical subcommittee. There was a lot of conversation around stickers, but that sticker specifically.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And that's a great idea input from Sandy, because she's really involved in the experience, camping industry, campground experience that consumers have. And she doesn't want them to have a soured experience, because that makes it bad for everybody. And it only takes one bad review to knock out 1,000 great reviews.
Right.
That's right.
Yep.
No, I'm just wondering, because most of the campgrounds that KOA is branded as are not KOA. They're franchisees, right? And with that being said, how much control do you have over a campground that's under the KOA name that's not necessarily owned by you? Do they have to follow your rules? Is it like a McDonald's? You have to cook a burger for 3 minutes on each side, and it's got to be the same meat that we're getting, and everything's in line that way. Do you guys have a bunch of operating?
It's pretty close. I mean, honestly, what we'll do is when we get a design, whether that be for new sites or figure a whole new campground, we've got a set of standards that we design to. So we're talking like 35-foot turning radiuses, 12-foot wide pads, and all these other small things that come together to kind of paint what a KOA is. And when it comes to electrical, we do designs for only the sites here in the office. So we don't touch the buildings, we don't touch lights, anything like that. But we'll come up with the designs for the sites and all those circuits, all the wire sizes. And then we'll hand that off to the franchisee. And the franchisee then goes to a contractor, and that contractor will perform the rest of the electrical design for the site, but then also do and install the electrical design in completion, if you will. So
now with that also be the same case if it was a campground that was in existence that became a KOA later on?
Yes. So we would go through and, if a lot of times if it is a campground like that, they will ask for electrical updates. And so maybe they're not updating the whole campground at once, but we
Okay.
are taking a look at section by section to go, okay, if you're having voltage drop issues here, let's identify where your service panel location is, up those wire sizes, and get this balanced out. Because, you look at some of these old parks, and a lot of times you're getting, our maximum is, 7 sites per circuit, but a lot of time you're getting 10, 15 or more.
The whole,
It's
whole
those
campground-
areas that we're like,
the whole,
okay,
the whole
we need to sit
campground's
down.
wired in one ditch.
Yep.
We got a guest here tonight, David. Glad to see you here. And Michael, you've done some work with David, right?
Oh, I know him very well. Hey,
Yeah.
David, how are you?
How's it going, Dave?
Wow, he seems to know already on the sticker idea. Wow.
Yeah, and he would know. He's
Yep.
he's one of the lead guys in this.
All right. Thanks.
I will also share. We have teams internal to KOA that support our franchise system. So we have our franchise business coaches. We have our quality assurance teams that meet with our franchisees on a regular basis. And so the communication that we're working through will go through them, and there will be plenty of opportunities for us to help educate and help coach our franchisees to make sure that they're prepared when this comes. And really, that's where Ryan and I are staying in so engaged, is to make sure that, we can gather this information and really get it out to the system.
Yeah. We got a question from Corey Johnson.
Yeah.
Who says, an example for a GMI need. 2 weeks ago, I ran into a state park, not in New England. That's all right. We get people that watch us from London and Australia and around the world. We toyed with changing the name, but we like it. With an open ground on the power pedestal, 30 amps receptacle. The 50 amp receptacle ground tested okay. Moved my 30 amp shore power cord to the 50 amp connection with a NEMA 14 SOP to TT30R adapter cable. I have no clue. See, John and I are not. we can produce a show. Corey, I have no idea. Who wants to tackle Corey's question?
Oh, I know all about that.
Yeah, Mike's got that one.
Okay, so here's the deal. If you have a broken ground connection, okay, that's what allows any fault currents inside of your RV, which could be tiny on the milliamps all the way up to full circuit breaker current. It allows it to turn into a voltage. So now, I would suspect in that troubleshooting scenario, what has happened is inside of that box, that should have that same wire. Now, we call it a ground wire. It's technically called the equipment grounding conductor. The EGC should be connected, from the incoming ground bond from the service panel, and it should go over to, the 30 amp, the 50 amp, and the 20 amp receptacles. It sounds like there's a problem in the 30 amp, which is problematic. And so what he did was he did something that's called a dog bone adapter. On the one side is a 50 amp male plug. I might even have one here. Of course I've got one here.
Of course you got
So it would look like this, right?
Just happen to have one. Right.
Just happen to have one here laying on my desk. Oh, it's a mess. And convert it down. I don't have a 30 here handy, but converts it to a 30. Now, technically, it's a little bit of a code violation because you've got a 50 amp circuit breaker protecting a 30 amp cord, but everybody does it. And I think there's a couple of exceptions in NEC that makes it totally okay. So it doesn't give you more power in your RV, but generally speaking, that 50 amp plug is more robust. So if you have a problem with the 30, plugging a dog bone adapter that steps from that 50 down to a 30 may in fact help. And that may be one workaround. If you've got a GMI equipped RV and you have a loose 30 amp pedestal, guess what? Simply giving them a 50 to 30 amp dog bone adapter for the weekend or whatever is the fix until you can get in there and open up the darn pedestal and repair it. Now, I will make one thing that I'm working on clear. I'm also working on something that's called lockout tagout, LOTO. And part of this is I don't want non-electrical people opening up live panels and switching out breakers and all this other stuff. They're going to get themselves killed. So you don't want just people casually going inside of these panels. It's dangerous. I worked with a lot of 480 three-phase power, and in industrial situations. I mean, you won't even leave a good-looking corpse when that's done with. You just don't. So so there's tricks like that that could be really, really good.
Well, Sandy, I guess Sandy picked up on that. I think we should use positive language when talking to the campgrounds, and rather than talking about control and cost, help them to see the benefits and the options. There's a lot of crazy history over electrical pedestals, that's for sure, and misunderstandings that we don't want to resurrect. I think you're right, Sandy, but I think also that we've got to do a better job on the consumer side of this. A lot of this responsibility, as I tell our dealers in NERVA, they've got to, and Bernie could speak to this, they've got to instruct the customers who are buying these new units that have the GMI devices on them, because I can tell you, we can talk positive all we want, but I can tell you half the salespeople won't, number one, they won't know that it's on there because they didn't do their homework on product specs and evaluation. And they're going to be too interested in selling a product and not doing a complete PDI, not doing a complete education, not pointing out what the book is or where the directions are for handling this, because they're going to get fooled. They're going to show up at a campground, and the campground's not going to know what they're talking about, and the driver is not going to know. But they will ask. I've been there. You guys have all been there. They will ask the customer, "Oh, this is a 2026. Do you have a GMI device on the unit?" And they're going to say, "I don't know."
Oh. Can I give you one little quick? I'm going to give everybody a free piece of advice here, or I should say a free troubleshooting thing.
Well, I don't pay you to come on the show anyways, Michael.
Okay. All right. Well, didn't you ever buy me a beer? You owe me a beer for this one. Okay. So a lot of people, a lot of consumers, before they go on a camping trip, they'll go charge up their batteries and everything else, and maybe get the refrigerator running, and they'll go buy themselves a little Honda generator or a little inverter generator and stick it in the driveway so that they can charge up their RV. I do exactly the same thing. The problem is, or I should say, well, the key here is none of those inverter generators actually have what we call a bonded neutral ground. So it's got a floating neutral. Every single one of those are going to fail if you have a GMI equipped RV, unless you put in one of those little neutral ground bonding plugs. I'm the guy that invented the neutral ground bonding plug like 15 years ago. Everybody yelled at me. All the electrical groups, the inspector groups, and everybody else. After 10 years of this, they finally accepted it into code that the little bonding plug that you can buy, for $5 or less, plugged into any of the spare outlets on these inverter generators, will bond the neutral ground properly, give it the right voltage references, and it should allow I guarantee it will allow a GMI equipped RV to power up. If not, you can't power it up. You can't charge your batteries. You can't cool off your refrigerator. You won't be able to do anything.
Yeah, you can't do any of that stuff. Yeah.
It's interesting. Sandy's got another point here. RVers are not going to read the manuals. We know that historically. They don't. They buy a coach. They put them in the upper compartment. They don't read anything. They yell at the office, the campground office. They yell at their service technicians, and they go to trade the unit. And we see dealers. Bernie will tell you, the manuals will still be in the oven. They haven't even turned on the oven.
They haven't even. No.
So she says, wonder who might be working on that.
To have an app. She's saying to have.
That's my dream.
Well,
I like books, but in my truck and everything is online. And after a while, it's like, come on, I got to go look this up. I really want a printed book. But what do you guys think? What do you like? Printed books? You like apps? What do you think?
I'm turning into an app guy.
Yep.
I like to have a big honking PDF that's searchable. I think it's great.
There you go. A lot of the surge protectors on the markets today do have apps, which is pretty nice. I don't know if these GMI devices are going to have an app coming out of the gate initially. One of the things we've not talked about, we talked about, the anticipated date of September of 2026 for them rolling out. I think one of the things that is a challenge is these devices are not on the market yet. And so there are prototypes. And so it's really difficult.
Will they be tested? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. To be tested in the field. There's some prototypes out there, but to get our hands on one is really, really difficult. So I don't want to speak for the device manufacturers, but I don't believe they're going to be being delivered until like just in time to go into the new coaches. And so to answer Sandy's question, I don't know that they're going to have an opportunity to build that back end for the app. That's just my observation. I don't know that to be the case.
Not initially, probably not.
It's going to be tricky.
I just hope that they do the proper testing, that the unit itself, the GMI unit, doesn't fail.
Right.
In a different way, right? Because we've seen it when they changed over to 12-volt refrigerators. There was a lot of issues with those. It's like sometimes they build stuff and they don't look at it in a practical sense and don't use it that way. So I'm just hoping that they get a chance to test it properly, because this is a safety issue, but it can be an awful inconvenience issue if the GMIs are failing.
Right. Imagine you had this on your whole house. If something went wrong inside of your house, your whole house powers down.
Exactly.
Just imagine how disturbing that would be.
Right.
And the one thing I think is important is the great thing is everybody in the industry that I've talked to understands the need, and we're all supportive of it. Right. We understand that it's a life safety issue, and it's something that's very, very important. And so I think it's a great movement, a great advancement for the industry. I would just really like to get my hands on one to really see what it does.
Everyone keeps offering to send them to me, but I'm under so many NDAs. I'm like terrified that I would spill the beans. I do consulting for half a dozen major manufacturers on all kinds of weird stuff. I have to be very, very careful. I have NDAs that I can't disclose who I have NDAs with. That's how bad this is.
That's how important you are, Mike.
I don't know about that. It's just they send me stuff and I'm like, am I supposed to know about this? Because I have engineering friends and engineers spill the beans.
So those you guys that have had all these meetings and you're in on these meetings, this industry is really good for missing deadlines. How tight is that September 2026? How is this cast in concrete, or are we going to see delays until we get those systems back in place?
Everybody's I'm not a good I don't bet well, so I don't know that I put any money on it. I really don't know. As Mike had alluded to earlier, I do know RVIA is having a board meeting next week, and that's really they're gonna make the decision there.
Now, I've heard. Sorry for cutting off there, but is it possible that you and Mike are going to be at the same meeting next week?
I will not be at that meeting, no, sir.
Okay, and Michael, you're going to be at a meeting next week?
Me? No, I am not. But I have my thumb on the pulse of what's happening. I'm supposed to get first awareness of this.
Okay.
Right. Hey, it's really good to hear that KOA has such a great way to communicate with all the campgrounds that they manage, right? So you have this, that technical information, and it goes out to everybody, and it gets there. But, some of the smaller campgrounds, and Sandy probably could relate to this, they might be out of the loop. I mean, some of these folks, they're literally mom and pop places that are out in the middle of nowhere, and they may not have even heard about this yet. And I know, and you're right, Bob, a lot of my colleagues in the sales department probably haven't heard about it either, right? So the question is how do we get it out to those other 10,000 campgrounds, making sure that it gets out there?
Yeah, Bernie, if I could. So we've been in contact with the folks at Ojai and some of their technical people. And so we're sharing information with them at the same time. And so I do believe this is going to be something that's going to share outside of the KOA system. We really believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so, at KOA, we want to make sure that the industry is successful, not just us. So I think that's really, really important. I do know that I've spoken with a gentleman that's going to be speaking at Ojai on this issue next week. And so we've shared notes. And so we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're not solely focused on KOA, even though, obviously it is our priority. We really want to make sure that the industry is successful, because we're also dependent on one another. Be it the dealers, the manufacturers, the campgrounds, the independent campgrounds. It's super important that we are successful as an industry, not just protect ourselves.
And one of the things that I had promoted a few years ago, never got any traction before, but could now, was somebody like a KOA to say, okay, we're going to create like a little trifold brochure that would go out to every campground you can think of. Any camper that comes in there gets this little thing and says, what is this GMI thing? And you could have a little logo that brought to you by your friends at KOA. Now, some of the competitors might not like that, but too bad. They need to get in the program. But you're right. I think it's great that you guys are considering that KOA is not just its own little island. And I do the same thing too. I'm an equal opportunity teacher. I want all of them to be safer. And here's the thing. If these pedestals are tested and made sure they're wired properly, they will be safer for non-GMI equipped RVs as well. And that's an important part of this. As the rising tide thing, it will make it safer for everybody.
You're exactly right, Mike. Somebody had referenced the question earlier about that 30 amp and using the dog bone on the 50 amp. Something as simple as, these receptacles have a certain number of cycle times, right? I believe it's like 400 or 500, something. I don't remember exactly.
I know the number.
So, those devices, those receptacles, the 50s, the 30s, they do need to be replaced on a, fairly frequent basis every few years to make sure that that issue could have just been a bad receptacle. And so to Mike's point, if we're out there and we're checking our pedestals, making sure that everything is proper, checking that pedestal, checking both receptacles, it could be just as simple as a bad receptacle. The ground could be fine. It's just that receptacle has gone bad.
That's exactly right. And the number that I found in a non-published study on these was 300 insertions was what a TT30 was rated for.
Wow.
Think about that. And they're all kind of falling out. In my own lab, I got a brand new pedestal hanging there on the side of the bench. I can plug in stuff. If I'm going to plug in any 30 amp stuff, I put a bungee cord around it because that thing wants to walk its way out of there. It just does. And so that's part of it. So, and I think someone had alluded to that you don't have to do your entire campground at once, but by golly, you should be cycling through 20% of your things every year, probably 1/5 of them. Yeah. You go through, you test them and you correct them. And I think that's a really, really important mindset to get people to think about. Well, this is just part of the electrical safety stuff. I've been in many older campgrounds. I don't think that thing has seen an electrical inspector in decades. It's just terrifying to me.
Well, for Sandy to look at this, do we see this as a marketing opportunity for campgrounds? Are they going to start with maybe a section that is only for GMI RVs that show up, and then they bring this out to the others? Are they going to, I guess for Sandy, are the campgrounds going to be proactive in letting their consumers know what they're doing on that, in their annual bulletin, or before they open up for the season, say we've got X number of sites that are GMI equipped? Sandy, give me your view on that standpoint, if you would. And
we should get Sandy on for one of these videos. She's
really
great.
She's got great information. But I was just thinking, Bob, as you're saying that, when you're going on the KOA site, and you're picking your campsite and you're saying my RV is 32 feet long and I need a 50 amp and I am GMI, like my RV is GMI certified.
Equipped, yes.
Is equipped, yeah. So
it puts the thought into their process to do it. I do want to, we love KOA, and I've been working since the days of Jim Rogers. And to the point that we said before, KOA is probably the most gracious corporation that I've seen in America. And they publish the 2025, they publish every year, the Camping and Outdoor Hospitality Report. A couple of us were talking before we went on the air. KOA pays for the research. Scott Barrett, Karen Consulting does all of the preparation of it. And then they make it available to everybody, literally. Anybody in any campground, in the industry. I joked with Bernie beforehand, and I tell all of our dealers when I do training with our dealers, say, as soon as this comes out, you should, schedule a sales meeting for 7:30 the next morning, put it in everybody's hands, make it mandatory that they read it. These are our customers. These are the consumers that are watching the show tonight. These are your customers. You want to know what the customers do? You look at this report. You ought to be able to handle that. You ought to have it on your desk when you're talking to a new prospect that comes into the dealership. Say, you know what, this is a great report, and give the customer a copy of it. But it tells you everything that's about it. And I would think that this might find its way into that somewhere. But they go way back, and if you see this guy, stop it, Toby. No, this is Toby, but it's not named.
He's got hair.
I told Toby O'Rourke, this is not. I love you, Toby. I love KOA, but I didn't name my dog yet. He's named after Toby Keith. All right.
Oh, okay.
To do that,
as long as he doesn't drink your whiskey, that's okay.
He doesn't get near my Jack Daniels. I can do it. Let me see if we got any other comments out there. I hope we didn't miss anybody.
Yes, Sandy's been very prolific tonight.
Yeah. Well, she wanted to come on. I know she wanted to come on a couple of weeks ago when we had our technical panel. And she had a conflict. I think as a camper, it would motivate
me. Yeah.
Motivate me to protect my Yeah, exactly. You spend $250,000 for a motorhome, and if you don't know what GMI is, that's going to be a problem. Eric and Ryan, what about words of wisdom for the consumers themselves? Because everything you do is based on making a good experience for the consumer themselves, and what can they do in the next year or so to make sure that they're current and stay up on this stuff? And David might have some comments on that also.
As a consumer, I think it's just knowing that, it might take a little bit of time to get all of this education and everything out to the system, and for our campground owners and operators to be ready for those questions. I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of work over the next year. And, I think to Sandy's point, communication is key. We are going to be communicating as much as we can. I mean, the same way we do construction on our new parks or existing parks, you put up a sign that says, hey, we're under construction right now, but thank you for understanding. I think it's going to be something very similar to that, and just trying to realize that this is an issue that we're going to be tackling to make your experience not only more enjoyable but safer at the very ground level. I mean, that's the goal of this.
Yeah. Got a question for you, Mike. Are there guidelines for new builds that can go by now?
That they can go by. The manufacturers have got all this listed on, and they've all got copies of UL 2299 and NEC 501.40. But the whoever the builders are, whoever is actually manufacturing these devices, have got to have install documentation, and they should be going out to the manufacturers. I should say the RV builders, to show them how to install them. And also, they're supposed to be, I got to have a way to test them in situ to make sure that they're still working.
Right.
But I don't know if Ryan or which one of you guys, but you were saying, yeah, there are no real devices out there just yet. The only ones are prototypes. And this is kind of a little late, 11th hour kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It just is.
Yeah, Mike, and you've referenced UL 2299 a few times. It's not fully reviewed and approved yet.
No,
either.
I know that. Believe me, I know that. I see it. Duh.
Yeah, it's currently
It's a flexible the thing right now.
Yeah.
But if it's not approved, when do you guys think that it may be approved? When is that going to be in the cycle, especially in terms of consumer education or OEMs getting
Well,
these
average
products?
person is not going to know anything about UL or 22. To me, it's all to them. It's all alphabet soup. They just want to know whether it works or not. Who's going to worry about that are the guys that are building these things, because it's got to be. It says in code in NEC that it has to be a listed device. UL is the listing of that device, so they're doing their best to try to hit a moving target. And now they've got to get enough of these things out there that you can do the new builds. I've got some people who are saying, well, I want one for my RV right now, my older RV. And I'm going, well, they're going to fulfill the ones for building the ones coming off the assembly line first.
Yeah.
And then they'll worry about building aftermarket ones that you can plug in and build later.
That'll be 2 or 3 years down the pike.
There's a lot of these things. You think about this is a lot of units to build.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, guys, we are pretty much at the end. Sandy has one quick comment, but for people building
New campgrounds
right now, which obviously, Eric, you
just got to ground them right.
Current code is what they need to fulfill. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, a 4-wire system, and you're going to be set to go. You shouldn't have any worries. But
if you look at 1192 and 1194, those are both NFPA catalogs or books. They describe the code is out there. Just follow the freaking code.
Yep.
I go on a show like this, and I'm expecting Mike to, be extremely well prepared, which he always is. Just has all the information. But you guys from KOA, I have to say, you got your act together.
I almost said doo-doo, but we can't say.
You've got all the current information, which is more than everybody else. So you're doing really good.
Yeah,
and
I would agree.
That the company you work for is so generous with the information that they gather. This is just another great example. And it's been a pleasure spending time with everybody tonight. It's a wonderful show.
We wanted to jump on it early because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're seeing a lot more information about this right now. It's starting to work its way into the mainstream, but of course we always have to worry about that consumer. And I think, RVDA and RVIA, we have to come up with some really good educational programs to present this to the consumers when they're sitting at the desk buying that RV. If we want, we don't want to have bad experiences at the campgrounds, but the fact of the matter is, and Sandy and I work a lot together and agree on this, that if we would just educate the consumer better and make them understand what this is. Yes, we love our RVs. Yes, they give us great pleasure in understanding the roadside, and enjoying taking it out, making those family memories. But we as dealers, that it's our responsibility to make sure that they fully understand how this is going to impact, because it could be a disaster. We don't want it to be a disaster, and we'll have a few more programs between now and then, and love to have you guys back as we see how this progresses. And maybe next time, if you guys are really good, we'll have Sandy on the panel. We'll get
wow.
Oh, you should, man. She's great. She's a great interview.
She is. She's a great guest. We'd love to have her on the program. All right, guys, we will see everybody down the road. Thank you very much for your input, for your discussion, and really love to see what KOA is doing. As always, you're just a great friend to the RV and the outdoor hospitality industry.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much.
And thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. This is good stuff. Very good. Thanks very much, Bob.
We'd love to talk about it. All right. Tell your friends, like and share the program, and we'll see you down the road. Thank you very much for being there.